Hello, and welcome to the Freedom from Religion Foundation's Ask an Atheist. I'm Ryan Dudley, State Policy Manager here at FFRF, and this week we're talking about Black atheism and secular voices within the African American community. Joining me in studio is legal fellow Hirsch Joshi.
Hi.
Our guest this week is Mandisa Thomas, founder and president of Black Nonbelievers. It's a nonprofit based out of Atlanta that provides education and community engagement within the Black secular community, especially for those who might feel like an outcast living a life free from religion. Thank you for joining us, Mandisa.
Hello, Ryan. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's always so good to see you. We wanted to go ahead and start the conversation. Well, I want to go ahead and go a little bit off script because you and I had just been together, tabled at an event at the Secular Student Alliance in Little Rock, and you told me of a very interesting debate you have coming up. Can you just give us a brief overview of this debate that you have coming up, with it, who it's with, and where we can watch it?
Absolutely. And yes, it was such a pleasure to see you again, as always, Ryan. I was telling you about a debate that I will be participating in with Pastor Kent Hovind, who is based in Alabama. For those of you who aren't familiar, Hovind is an evangelical creationist minister who has an attraction in Alabama called Dinosaur Adventureland. It's a creation museum. He's also over Genesis Baptist Church. I think it's on the same grounds. I will be traveling down there in person since Alabama is only 3 hours away from me. But it will be live streamed via the Genesis Baptist Church's YouTube channel, and it will also be simultaneously live streamed on Black Nonbelievers' YouTube channel. And it will be a public stream. It will take place on Friday, July 12th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Central Time. It was interesting to get that invitation because usually I don't do apologetic debates. However, I have seen quite a bit of, the creationists and their viewpoints and how problematic, for lack of a better word, it can be. So I'm thinking that in this time, in this election year, and as we are battling all of these things that are taking place in public policy, that it would be good to have this debate and tie it into what we're dealing with in this country right now.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I can't wait to watch it. I'm going to go ahead and give a plug for Black Nonbelievers YouTube channel. Go there to watch it. I think that's probably where we'll give you a little bit of an audience there. So
awesome.
Okay. So I kind of want to get back to the script and kind of what we had planned on talking about today, which was Black atheism, and we really wanted to do this for our Juneteenth show, which was yesterday, but unfortunately we had to push it back due to some pretty big Supreme Court decisions that came down. But we here at FFRF acknowledge and celebrate Juneteenth as a holiday commemorating the end of slavery in the United States.
Mandisa, does Juneteenth have a greater significance for American Black nonbelievers, such as yourself, because of the large role Christianity and the Bible played in establishing and defending slavery across this nation?
For those who aren't familiar with the celebration, it was on June 19th, 1865, that Union soldiers arrived in Galveston, Texas, 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, to let them know that slavery had indeed ended. So, of course, 1863, we were still in the middle, the country was still in the middle of the Civil War, but the Emancipation Proclamation basically declared that slavery had ended. But in southern states, where they wanted to hold on to it as long as possible, of course, the slaves in the South, in Texas in particular, were not informed. So it was the Union soldiers that came and told the slaves. That's when they told them officially that they were free. They were no longer enslaved legally. And so what this means, especially for those of us who are non-believers and who acknowledge the horrors of slavery in the United States, as well as the transatlantic slave trade and the slave trades throughout the world, Liberation physically is extremely important. However, if you have ever attended a Juneteenth celebration, and I've been participating in them since I was a child, they tend to be very religious in nature. There is a lot of credence to God and just a lot of religious language, religious jargon. As a matter of fact, yesterday in my city there was a Juneteenth celebration, and there was a choir that sang all three verses of "Lift Every Voice and Sing," including the last verse, "The God of our weary years, God of our silent tears." And so um, it really it signifies and it reminds us how deeply indoctrinated and rooted in the church the Black community still is, and how a celebration like this, with a celebration like this, a religion in the church tends to be extremely overpowering. And as an organization, we advocate for community support and liberation from the mental, the mental aspect of religion, because that lasts far longer than physical enslavement, and it has lasted much longer, especially in Black communities. And so what's really significant to us is that we acknowledge the history and the struggles that Black folks have endured in this country alongside many others, but also that there is still a long way to go with unpacking religiosity in our communities and in this country. And with a holiday like Juneteenth, where we absolutely acknowledge and celebrate liberation, it often tends to be a bit awkward at times whenever we are just simply surrounded by a bunch of religious folks. Though we definitely acknowledge the liberation part of it.
Very well said. I really appreciate that insight. Concerning Black atheism and Black voices in the secular community, and Mandisa, you obviously started Black Nonbelievers. Can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to found Black Nonbelievers? Can you tell us a little bit about the mission of the organization and the impact you've seen so far?
Absolutely. So at the end of 2010 was when the scandal with the late Bishop Eddie Long broke. And for those of you who aren't familiar, Eddie Long, he was the founder and bishop of New Birth Missionary Baptist Church in Lithonia, Georgia, which is on the east side of the Atlanta area. Eddie Long was a very staunch anti-LGBTQ conservative-leaning pastor who was carrying on affairs with young men in his church, some of them who were minors at the time. And he justified it through the Bible and through his spiritual beliefs. And so that got, of course, that sent the Atlanta community in a tailspin, in an uproar. It was around that time that I had met Jeremiah Kamara, who is on the FFRF board. Shout out to him and Granada, his wife. He had just released his book, The New Doubting Thomas, The Bible, Black Folks, and Blind Belief. And so, not having been raised religious per se, but being surrounded by it in my own life, I really, really started to re-examine my thoughts on religion and also my identity, because for the longest time I identified as spiritual but not religious, but there weren't that many Black folks that I knew in particular who explicitly identified as atheists, even though folks had questioned religion and were talking about the church and how bad it can be. I had to do some introspection and reflection about my identity, and I was able to find a Black atheist group on Facebook through Jeremiah, through him linking it. And so it was through there that I connected with other Black atheists online. However, when that translated to trying to find in-person community, that was completely different. The atheist groups that I found were predominantly white. And while that wasn't a deterrent, I was cautioned by one of my online friends that those meetups can be, those outings and those events can be extremely awkward for people of color. Oftentimes, you're the only one there. Oftentimes, you tend to be tokenized. You tend to you're expected to represent the entire Black community, or when you discuss how more challenging it is to be a Black atheist, it's often met with dismissal. It's met with a sense of denial. And when I attended my first meetup at one of the local groups here, I experienced just that. And so there was another Black atheist there who came. And so after the meeting, and after having some very contentious dialogue with some of the other folks there, and I want to say that it was great to just meet other atheists, period. But after this meeting, I said to him, I said, there has to be more atheists out here. There has to be more Black folks who are probably either just sitting in church and they don't believe anymore, or they're questioning, but they do not have a support system, or they do not have anything or anyone in person to turn to. And so it was agreed on right there that we needed to start something that was local to the Atlanta area that helped bring more Black atheists and religion doubters together. Now, we acknowledge that there was the existence of other Black atheists and secular entities at the time that were national, but we really wanted to start something here locally in Georgia that helped bridge the gap between Black atheists or Black folks who were questioning and who were non-religious, and also as well as the broader local secular community, because I learned that there were other groups here. I learned that there were other events that were taking place, but yet those groups were lacking in the diversity that we often speak of. And so it was necessary that we weren't just simply going to wait on this to happen, that we needed to facilitate it. And so that was where Black Nonbelievers, which was started as Black Nonbelievers of Atlanta, was formed. It was initially only supposed to be local to the Atlanta area. However, because there was interest in starting similar groups in different cities, we expanded our scope nationally so that we could provide, a platform and a foundation for similar affiliate groups to be formed and to flourish on the ground in different cities, so that we could participate in whether it was social events, service projects, and interfaith dialogue, things that other Black folks do as well. Because having grown up in New York City, having been immersed in Black culture and engaged in Black culture, that was something that was important for us to represent in particular. Not that it was exclusive to, but that we were shown that we were Black folks. We don't believe, and we are just as much a part of the Black community as anyone else.
Well said. And Mandisa, how would you describe the current landscape of Black atheist culture in America, especially down there in the Bible Belt where you are?
Yes. So in describing the impact, as Ryan asked previously, right? So back when BM was getting started and there were other entities, at the time, Pew Research reported that 87% of the Black community identified as religious. Now, we still make up about 12% of the U.S. population. So that is extremely high. That has actually gone down in recent years to about 79. It's still pretty high, even according to those numbers. And the number of Black folks who hold religion and their belief in extremely high regard. However, Pew Research and other research also shows that the rise in nuns. There's a rise in nuns, non-religious nuns, people who are church attendance is down. So there is an overall increase in secularism, people who are doing away with traditional beliefs. So what we're seeing here is that it is noticed that among Black millennials and the Gen Z generation, that religion is no longer as important as it was, and they recognize that there are organized efforts and organizations like Black Nonbelievers that are fostering community engagement and advocacy for Black atheists and non-religious voices. And so that has led to some very significant appearances and representation in the general public. We have been featured on CNN. I wrote an op-ed piece back in 2015. We were featured in a CBS Sunday Morning segment about the openly secular campaign that was taking place at the time. I was featured in myself and others were featured in billboard campaigns. And also recently, the documentary that is produced by the National Museum for African American Culture called God Talk features 7 millennials, Black millennials, with different faith perspectives, one of whom is an atheist. And so the directors reached out to us as Black Nonbelievers to find atheists participants in their roundtable sessions. And also they came to my home to interview me and also another one of our members. And we are prominently featured in this documentary that is being screened worldwide. So it is showing the changing landscape of religion in Black communities, what we think of religious traditions and church traditions, how that's changing, what that means for different segments of the population like LGBTQ folks, women, young people, and so on and so forth. And so it became important for our voices to be included in this, in this project. And so we are now officially a part of the Smithsonian and National Museum for African American Culture. We have donated materials to them for their research, and we have also participated in other research studies, in other documentaries that have amplified the voices of non-religious people. And so what that's doing is giving more encouragement to those who were silent either for so long, or they're just coming out of religion and still dissecting their concepts of gods, and knowing that there's support for them, knowing that they don't have to go through this blindly, that there are people and entities that support them. And not only are we supporting them, but that we're speaking up, we are advocating on behalf of our positions, as well as other human rights issues that impact all of us.
So just to go off script a little bit here, I am curious if there's any one issue that you think has pushed folks more towards BN or just to be non-religious in general. You cited LGBTQI plus issues. I imagine you're also talking about the rampant sexual abuse in the church as well. Is there any one issue area that you see that's contributed to sort of that de-religiosity over the last few years?
So there are a number of things, but I think the primary for Black atheists and Black nonbelievers in particular is the socialization and the inability to connect socially with believers, because there is such a stronghold. Religion plays such a huge role in people's lives that it is hard to connect. It is hard to connect socially. It's hard to date. It's hard to foster relationships that could lead to perhaps families and significant connections because of the role that the church has played. Recently, I had the experience of listening to one of the local radio stations here in Atlanta, and they had a group chat segment which asked the question. It said, opposites attract, could you date someone who didn't believe in God? And the answers were horrendous. The answers were basically like, heck no, I want to say the other word, but they were like, heck no, how do you find your morality? We'll be arguing all the time. Someone said they dated an atheist before, but they didn't say it initially. They eventually told them. So it was spun as if they were lied to, and not the fact that perhaps it would have been difficult to tell this person about their non-belief because of the overwhelming religiosity. And so I actually wrote into that station. I wrote into that station and complained about that subject and how they asked the question, and how the hosts were basically making jokes at our expense. And these are things that we deal with regularly in Black communities. It is often what feels so stifling to deal with so many religious people that there is a sense of relief to find other folks who get it. And because religion and the God concept is so interwoven into the Black community, that it's almost hard to separate the two. It's almost like you can't be Black and be an atheist. You can't be Black and be an atheist. I mean, we've heard that before. So to reject the idea of God, to reject religion, is to be rejecting the history. It rejects the culture of being Black, which is certainly, they are not mutually exclusive, and there's so much information and so many misconceptions surrounding that. But that is the main thing that many of our members deal with, is just the overwhelming religious presence that it is hard to connect socially with other Black folks.
So one thing that we've seen here and that we kind of are aware of is that the majority of predominant voices in the secular community are white and mostly men. Do you think that's a disproportionate reflection of the Black secular voices that are out there? And if so, what can we do to help break those voices through to reach more people?
So we have to be realistic and honest about the numbers, right? The numbers still, for the Black community, still show religion as being very high. However, in my involvement in this community, I've come across quite a few Black atheist activists, and at Black Nonbelievers, we have helped facilitate a pipeline of leadership, as well as other folks to express themselves and have opportunities to present to the general public, which is another part of our mission, which is not, it is to foster community, it is to educate and inform, but also to amplify as many voices as possible from our demographic. And so, like I mentioned before, you have Jeremiah Kamara, who produced the documentary Contradiction. He also produced a documentary called Holy Hierarchy, The Religious Roots of Racism. You also have folks like Candace Gorham, who wrote the Ebony Exodus Project, why some Black women are walking out on religion and why others should too. You also have Cynthia McDonald, who is a member of Godless Gospel. Sorry if I'm jumping the gun there. But you also have, there are a number of Black secular voices who are in the public realm. Dr. Anthony Penn, who just released his book, The Practice of Black Disbelief. He's been around longer than myself. And we've also seen other activists come and go. However, I am proud to say that at Black Nonbelievers, we have remained consistent for 13 years in engaging with our organization and the broader secular community. So I think what needs to happen more is for other organizations and other people to give room for not just Black atheists, but other atheists of color who are out here doing the necessary work to foster community, to expand their advocacy, and who are, for those of us rather, who are continuing to do this work and to make sure that we are continuing to grow our community with more people, with more activists, with more creatives, and folks who have left the church and who are seeking and finding community in us, but knowing that that they are going to be respected just as much as the prominent white male atheists that are out there.
And Ryan alluded to this earlier, and you've cultivated really an impressive community with Black Nonbelievers. Can you tell us about some of the community building events that the organization takes part in?
Absolutely. So, first and foremost, we host a cruise convention every year. We've been doing so since 2017. We feature guest speakers. We are always aboard a cruise ship. This year, we're going to be on Royal Caribbean's Independence of the Seas. Some of our speakers will be Chris Cameron, author of Black Freethinkers, Teddy Reeves, who is the executive producer of God Talk, the God Talk documentary that I mentioned earlier, Christy Puckett, who is a Black abolitionist, a reproductive justice and racial justice advocate activist in North Carolina, Candace Gorham as well. So that is our premier event. We have previously co-produced the Women of Color Beyond Belief Conference. Those videos can be found on our YouTube channel. And a special shout out to FFRF for being the major supporter for those conferences that we put on. We also host a YouTube program called In the Cut, which airs every first and third Saturday of each month. Thank you, Ryan, for popping up on our stream over the weekend to talk about the work that FFRF is doing. And we feature activists. We feature we feature all types of folks coming from the Black non-religious demographic and analyze who folks need to be aware of. We showcase their work for people to follow, and we also share upcoming events that Black Nonbelievers and our various affiliates are hosting. And we also table at various conferences, like we just table at the Secular Student Alliance's conference. We also co-sponsor the Hurston Scholarship with the Secular Student Alliance, which is a scholarship for Black non-religious student activists, and it was named after famed freethinker Zora Neale Hurston. So we pride ourselves on supporting students, supporting education, in addition to the other support that we provide.
Mandisa, you and I have run across each other at a number of events, and I think at one event I think it was an SCA convention, that you held up your phone and played a voicemail that you had received from somebody who was thanking Black Nonbelievers. And something that really sticks out to me is that Black Nonbelievers has really seemed to make a positive difference in people's lives since you all began. There are a handful of testimonies on the Black Nonbeliever website by people who have been touched by the work that you do, similar to this voicemail that you played for us. Do you care if we read a couple of those? I just want to show people how the impact that Black Nonbelievers is having.
Sure, no problem.
All right, so the first one that I want to read is, we really liked, it was from Gabriel Smooth, who wrote, and I quote, "Most days I want to die. I struggle with suicide and low self-esteem, low self-worth for most of my life. One day I got up the courage to tell my dad about the first man to touch me. The next day I watched him shake the man's hand at church. Every pain I had to pray away with no relief. My father, his mother, his brother, and both sisters are ministers. I've always been different and searched relentlessly for people who looked and felt like me. Then I found Black Nonbelievers. I love how inclusive you are. You let people discover themselves and encourage us on this journey to be free from religion, aka bondage. The connections alone are worth being a part of your organization. Never go away, please." Mandisa, these are just incredibly powerful testimony. We're so happy to hear people like Gabrielle, however tragic her story may be, they're able to find this sense of belonging within your community. So what are some common challenges that people face when they come out as atheists within the Black community? I think we touched on it a little bit, but is there anything else you'd like to add there?
Yes, so like many other atheists that we come across and we engage, many family members tend to think it's a phase. You're just angry at God. You'll be back. There's also this disbelief. There was a show that our co-host for In the Cut, Edith Gray, was a part of, Across Generations, with the former MSNBC host Tiffany Cross. She was representing the atheist perspective. And so the woman across from her almost could not believe, like, she was so flabbergasted that that there was a Black woman who did not believe in God. And we often encounter that. I've heard, like, I've never met a Black atheist before from other, like, white atheists, but we've often heard this from other Black atheists. It's almost like it's almost like we committed, like, a cardinal sin for like, it was almost like, well, I can't believe that, like, why? I don't understand why you don't believe in God. It's so, it's so a part of our history and our culture. But the thing is that we tend to we refer to the history and culture to explain our non-belief. We also refer to the doctrine of religion and Christianity in particular as to why we don't believe. So many of us tend to we tend to be met with shock at times, almost very much disbelief that we exist. And then, of course, it's like, well, we often hear the history of the church in the community and how much good it has done, and how much good it does now. So we tend to encounter a lot of defense at times when it comes to engaging many in the Black community. However, I will say, though, that with us tabling at various events, even with religious people present, we've often engaged those who were like, oh my gosh, I thought I was the only one. We hear that a lot as well. We often do hear from other Black folks, I thought I was the only one who didn't believe. I thought I was the only one who I didn't think that anyone else existed like me. And so what that does is, again, it fosters encouragement, inspiration, and this ability, hopefully, to really reflect based on the experiences of fellow Black non-believers who have been through either similar or the same experience. Now, even though I wasn't formally raised religious, I certainly have encountered a lot of it in Black communities, because you don't ever get away with it. Or you don't ever get away from it, if you will. Almost every Black person that we know or that we've engaged somewhere, so whether it's a relative or whether it's a coworker, is going to be religious in some way. They're going to hold religion and church in high regard. And it's overwhelming to the point where you almost don't even want to talk about it because of how prevalent it is. So there's definitely that sense of defensiveness, this idea that, we are some different species because we're atheists.
And there's just one more testimonial we'd like to share, and this one's not as heavy, but it comes as a great story nonetheless. It comes from Darren Johnson, who wrote in part, "When many of my most important possessions were stolen, Black non-believers came through with help to get a replacement computer. I realized that their main purpose is spreading the word about the existence of Black atheists, but I'll never forget this. It isn't only religious organizations that are out here helping the less fortunate." That's a really important thing we want to reiterate, Mandisa. The good can be done without religion. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So we have had members, Darren included, who have had unfortunate things happen to them in their lives, and they lost possessions, or they've experienced hard times. And so instead of just praying for someone or just simply sending well wishes, we will often ask, what can we do? Is there something that you need that could help you in the meantime? And so I remember this as clear as day, because I remember asking what Darren needed. And, he really almost didn't even want to ask. And I said, what do you need? I said, so at the time, we were able to help provide some funds to help him secure a new computer because it was the right thing to do. When we have folks who are, as non-believers and folks who don't subscribe to any like religious dogma, we realize that it's up to us to help each other. And there have been other smaller efforts that other Black atheists have individually put together for for others in their friend groups. But yes, as an organization, we have helped people. Some folks have come to us and asked for help, but we have often, and there are other members. We've also helped one of our members secure an electronic wheelchair. He's a disabled veteran, but he needed the battery for the wheelchair, and so we were able to. We established a GoFundMe to raise the necessary funds for the battery, for transportation, and other accessories that were needed. So when there are folks who go through hard times, which many people do, we try to do what we can and pitch in how we can because it is the right thing to do, because these are community members who do need support at times and who don't just want to hear, well, God's going to handle it, just pray on it. Everything will just simply be all right. No, well, or if they help you, there is some sort of religious caveat attached to it. Well, it's therefore by the grace of God. No, it's by the hands of human beings that help, even if it's just a small amount, that it makes a huge difference. And so we definitely embody that if folks are in need of help and there are resources that we can either give directly or help secure, then we will do that. Because again, as a community-based organization, it is simply the right thing to do, because we are not just simply talking about it. That means living our values and doing better for people, no matter who they are, because I certainly have helped religious people in my life as well. So, and it doesn't mean that they have to subscribe to atheism in order to do it. It just means that, we help them because it's the good thing to do. And the only thing I asked Darren to do was to give, his story and to give a quote for us for our campaign, which we very much appreciate that he did.
That's awesome. I love that you're putting your values into action, so to speak. So, but we are getting toward the end of our show here, Mandisa. So I want to know if anyone out there is watching is eager to get involved in the secular Black community, but they live in an area where that might not be so easy. What advice would you give them so they can find some connection somewhere?
So first and foremost, I encourage folks that even if there isn't a being affiliate in your area, find your local atheist, humanist, or secular group just so that you can have a local connection. We utilize Meetup for our events as well as social media, but I always advocate that it is important for you to connect with local groups no matter who they are, and you can connect with more than one. Ever since the pandemic, many of us are hosting online events, so you can connect with us virtually. One program that we are doing right now currently is, and I'm sorry if I double talk that, but we have collaborated with Compassion and Choices on the Can We Talk workshop series, which discusses everything related to end of life preparation and planning. Which is a valuable resource to non-religious people, because when it comes to death and dying, we are still often underrepresented. And so it's important for us to know our rights, what we can do when it comes to end of life, and how we handle family members and friends. And so it's important for individuals to tap into what they can view online, but also what's in their local areas. And if you see something that's lacking, don't be afraid to get involved. Even if you are not open and out with your atheism, because that's not a requirement to be a part of Black Nonbelievers, at least find some way that you can help your local secular organizations, because most of us need as many people and help as we can get. So don't be afraid to dive in locally, see what's already out there. And if there's an opportunity to start an affiliate, be an affiliate in your city, which we would love, reach out to us. Let's talk about it. Let's brainstorm through it and strategize and see how we can get one off the ground, and also get one off the ground where we are working in partnership with local groups in the area.
And Black secularism can be a blind spot for so many. What lessons would you say all non-believers can learn from the Black atheist community?
So one of the major lessons is about intersectionality, right? Because oftentimes when we think of state-church separation, keeping religion and government separate, it is about more than it is definitely about more than just simply keeping prayer out of the classrooms, keeping religious people and their policies at bay. Because it often, religion in our communities, in addition to the institutional aspects of racism and injustice, has severely impacted Black folks in a way that there is a lack of resources. There is a lack of access to adequate care. And these are things that when we push for, like economic justice, reproductive justice, which I know organizations like FFRF stand for, will adversely impact people of color, Black women in particular, more than other people. The infant mortality rate among Black women is high. Black women who die in childbirth is higher. So these are issues that directly affect us, that are tied into state-church separation, that many in our communities have probably never thought about. So there are real life, repercussions that go along with the lack of state-church separation that impact marginalized communities more than others. And so it definitely becomes more than just about speaking on it, and then also challenging state-church separation violations in court, because those challenging those things often impact other areas too. And I think it's important for the overall community to understand how that does impact Black communities, other communities of color, and how that ties into our culture so much that it's important for us to speak on these things, but also to have the support behind us on them as well.
Mandisa, you are undoubtedly just a star within this movement. We really appreciate you coming on here. From everything you're doing at Black Nonbelievers to Godless Gospel, which if you haven't checked that out, check out Godless Gospel. But we are wrapping up. So if anybody has any questions about anything that Black Nonbelievers is doing, make sure to go check them out at blacknonbelievers.org.
Absolutely.
And that wraps up this week's episode of FFRF's Ask an Atheist. Don't miss our weekly radio show, Free Thought Radio. You can find it at ffrf.org/radio or wherever you get your podcasts.
And be sure to check out the latest episode of We Dissent, the only podcast hosted exclusively by women constitutional attorneys, discussing state-church separation. Listen and subscribe to We Dissent wherever you get your podcasts, or check them out online at we-dissent.org.
If you want more information about the Freedom from Religion Foundation, check out our website at ffrf.org. If you're already a member, thank you. If not, please join us. See you next week on FFRF's Ask an Atheist.